Hey there! Today I'm going to show you how I turned my two-dimensional watercolor into a three-dimensional object. Check it out. So the first thing I did was cut out the basic shapes that I needed. Since the refrigerator is mostly a boxy type shape, I decided to use foam board for this. After I have everything cut out, all I need to do is just glue it all together until I get the refrigerator type shape that I'm looking for. The next step is to use clay to cover up all the gaps and cracks and crevices that I don't want showing up in the end product. Now we're going to work on the tentacles. So I'm going to take a little skinny piece of clay and I'm going to smooth it out and roll it around until it's just the right shape. Now for the suction cups on my tentacles, I'm going to take a little piece of clay, I'm going to roll it out till it's nice and thin, then take my knife and cut it up into little tiny pieces. Now I'm going to take each of those little pieces and I'm going to place them on my tentacle exactly where I want each and every one of those suction cups to be. Now I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to poke little holes in each of those little pieces and flatten them out until each one of them looks exactly like a suction cup. Now the door handles are pretty simple, they're just straight pieces, so I'll just cut them out of a piece of cardboard till they're the shape I want and then they attach them just like that. The next step is to attach the tentacles, so I'm just going to grab my clay tentacles and I'm going to start wrapping around the door handles and around the sides of the fridge and everywhere I need to in order to get it to look exactly like my original watercolor. Now things are starting to come together. I decided to make the radio out of foam board, so I just cut out the pieces that I wanted and then glued them all together, and then I used clay to smoothen out all the surfaces until I got just the right shape that I wanted. Now for the speaker on the radio, I put a little dab of clay on the front of it, and then I used my knife to start cutting out little slits to make the texture of the radio speaker. For the dial on the radio, I did kind of the same thing. I got a little dab of clay and pressed it on there, and then grab a skinnier dab of clay, and then use my knife to sculpt it into the right shape. Now that we've got the whole thing put together, it's time to start making some molds. Now we can't make any molds of the way it is right now, so we have to first take it apart and disassemble it, and then make molds of each individual piece. So we're going to start off by making a mold of the door handles and the radio. So for this we're just going to glue the radio and the door handles to the bottom of a box that I made out of foam board. Now I'm just going to pour silicone right over the top of the radio and the door handles and just let that harden. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the refrigerator body. I'm just going to make a box with a foam board, and then I'm going to put the refrigerator inside, and then I'm just going to pour silicone all around it. Now notice what kind of container I'm using to pour the silicone into the box, and that is a glass measuring cup. Now let me tell you, do not pour silicone in with a glass measuring cup. Do not let your silicone get anywhere near glass, otherwise you will lose your glass measuring cup because it will not come out. Trust me, pro tip. Now time to demold. So I'm going to take my knife to cut open the box that I made, and then I'm just going to pull all the looking pieces out. Now the radio came out by itself, and the door handles I got to pull out myself. So after getting pulled out, then it's ready to start using as a mold. Now the refrigerator, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut open the box that I made and then pull out the silicone. And then I'm going to cut a zigzaggy pattern down the back of the silicone so that way I can pull the refrigerator out. Now you want to do the zigzaggy pattern because then it makes it easier to put it all back together when you start pouring molds. Now the tentacles are really complicated, but I'm going to try to simplify it as much as possible. As you see right now, I am painting it with Mod Podge. I guess you could use any sort of glue or whatever, but you just want to put a coating over the edge so that way it doesn't stick to clays and stuff like that. You'll see what I'm talking about later on, but right now we're going to coat it with Vaseline. That way we make sure it doesn't stick to anything. That'll make the next process a lot easier. Alright, now time to start making our two-part mold. So what I'm going to do is just lay out some clay into the basic shape of the tentacle, and then I'm going to start building up clay around the tentacle until it's about halfway covered, all the way around. This is why we put on the Mod Podge and the Vaseline, to make sure that our tentacle doesn't stick to the clay that we're laying around it. Now that we've got all the clay set, I'm going to lay down some registration marks. This is so that way when the two parts of the mold come together, that way they will connect perfectly. For this I'm going to be using my initials, so I'm going to cut out a K and a T and stick them right onto the mold. And just like before, we're going to build a little box out of the foam board, and then we're going to pour our silicone right into the top and let that harden. Now I'm going to demold it like I did all the other ones, just pull it right out of the box to take off the clay, but I'm going to leave the tentacle into the silicone side, and then I'm going to paint over it with Vaseline. That way when I pour part 2 of the 2-part mold, it'll not stick to the first part. Now I'm going to put the molds back into the box with the tentacle facing up, and then I'm going to pour silicone right into the mold, and then wait for that to harden as well. Now that we've got all the molds we need, it's time to start pouring the resin. So you just pour some resin into the top of the refrigerator mold, and I'm stirring it around, I'm shaking it and wiggling it and trying to get into every single crack and crevice in there. And I'm going to do this about 3 or 4 times until I build up enough layers to get a nice thick edge. Now I'm going to demold it the same way I did before, just open up the back and then pull it out. For the radio and the door handles, it's going to be a little bit easier. I just pour the resin straight into the mold and just let it harden. After it's hardened, you should just be able to pop them right out. Now for the tentacles, I made sure to put ventilation holes on each end. So what I'm going to do is inject the resin in with a syringe into the top and wait till it starts coming out of the bottom hole, and then just let it harden from there. After it's hardened, you can just take off the rubber band, separate the molds, and then pop the tentacle right out. Now that everything is assembled, the next step is to paint it. Now I didn't go over how to paint it because I'm pretty sure you know how to paint it. I didn't do anything special, I just used paint brushes and acrylic paints. And that's about it. Now I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot from it. I know I learned a lot trying to make it. If there's anything that I might have glossed over or something you didn't quite catch, go ahead and let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to add that into my next video. I'm going to be doing a limited run of these Octo fridges, so if you want to pick one of those up, you can find it on my website at kthorndesigns.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so don't miss any awesome videos. If you want to be up to date on all of my super cool projects that I'm doing, the minute I start getting them done, then you can follow me on my Instagram page. You can also check me out on Facebook as well. And I hope I see you next time.